hopefully our microphones are all working. Just to begin with,
good afternoon.
Excellent. We are good to go. Just before we get stuck into questions, if I could just ask you to introduce yourselves, tell people a bit about what you do.
Yeah, I start. I'm Vincent Hebbelynck. I'm heading the technology incubation team within Proximus. So technology incubation stands for the place where we incubate non-core technology. So we are not trying out the 5G and the fiber. What we are doing is indeed trying out the blockchain, for example, artificial intelligence, all those kind of nice things we can work with. And actually, 3 years ago, we incubated the LPWA, so the LoRa. At that time, we made a choice between on the unlicensed spectrum between LoRa and Sigfox, and today the IoT, our LoRa network, is handled over to the business. But personally, I'm still deeply involved, as I'm also in the board of director of the LoRa Alliance representing Proximus.
Ron?
Yeah, good afternoon. So I'm Ronan Le Bras from Orange Group, so head of technical strategy and in charge especially of the network strategy for the IoT. And what it means is, Orange Group is 28 countries, and also Orange Business Services, who is acting as a system integrator in more than 100 countries. So we on the IoT, my role is to give some technical expertise and to advise the different affiliate of the group on the technical choice that they have to make to address their own market, knowing that of course from the West we have affiliates in Western Europe, in more Eastern and Central Europe, and also in Middle East and Africa. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. We need to really adapt to the local environment, and that's also reflected in our strategy in terms of networks.
Okay, thank you. So earlier today, we heard Greg from Cisco mention that LPWA was in its infancy, but this is an area that both Proximus and Orange have been working on for several years now. I was curious, just to begin with, Vincent, over the past 12 months, what have been the biggest learnings, the biggest changes that you have seen in this space?
Just to start, indeed, the techies like us like to talk about standards, but actually I want to really focus on the fact that I think we said it this morning as well, for the customer, the technology at the end of the day is not what they want to hear about. So it's about a solution towards their customer, and it's also it's about a solution towards their problem. Sorry, and it's also that way that we approached the situation 3 years ago, where we could indeed, with our cellular solution, not give an answer to at that time specific use cases in building management, for example. So we went through this through the assessment. We have chosen and deployed the LoRa network at that time, and had a lot of proof of concept. So what we saw, to answer your question, the last 12 to 18 months, on the technology side, several things changed. So we saw indeed the narrowband IoT that was not present 3 years ago really came mature and is there. So that's a fact. And we see also on the unlicensed aspect, with regards to Sigfox, less presence. So there has been some changes there, which somehow reaffirms for us ourselves and the choice that we have made a few years ago. And then what we also have made as a change, and it was quite deeply discussed this morning as well, is on focusing on verticals. And I think hearing what we've said this morning, we are even not focusing enough. So we are now focusing on 6 verticals, and I think we need to even focus more. When I say focus on verticals, is indeed in offering as a telco operator an end-to-end solution towards our customers. Of course, we stay on the connectivity level open to any partner that want to use our IoT network to offer services. So this is what I would say as changing in the last 12 to 18 months. And of course, also, like I said, we had quite some proof of concept. Now we have several tens of real industrial customers running over our IoT network. Although we mentioned the credibility of IoT earlier as well, I need to confess we are today not at the level on volume of what our expectations were 3 years ago. And I think it's not specifically for us. I think it's a general listening to everybody, a general industry statement. So those billions of devices will come, but are not there as we expected 3 years ago. So, but it gives good feeling right now.
Yeah. So on our side, I think yes, one aspect is that over the last 12 to 18 months, there's been on both type of technology, whether they are a license, so on LoRa and on the license like a mobile IoT solution, LTM and NB-IoT, there's a maturity that is coming. So of course, I would say LoRa because it's been there for a bit longer, and also it's a simpler technology to integrate in chipset or in modules. We see that now we've passed the step of proof of concept, and now we are moving to commercial offers, pilots. In France, we have signed several deals for typical smart city use case, like the smart container for the garbage collection, for example, with sensors, smart parking deals in other parts, or even smart agriculture. So now it's coming to a reality, commercial reality on LoRa, and we have offers. That means it's connectivity plus platform. So it's like we store the data, we index the data, we present the data through some APIs that are then pushed to the end customers. So this is a reality now, and we are even developing outside of the original footprint. On the mobile IoT, we see more maturity, but we're still not yet at the level where it is really fit for large commercial usage. We are just now seeing some new chipset, a new second generation of chipset that are really much more designed for the IoT. Especially, they will be less hungry in terms of energy. They are a bit less costly, and so this second generation chipset will be integrated in module this year, in the next few months. That are really, that I would say, the first generation that will be fit for large usage. I would say until now on mobile IoT, we see that it's ready for POC. So it's a good way to test the use case completely, to integrate that into a platform. But it's still very, as you said, in its infancy. So it's still very early for large commercial rollout, and especially for large adoption, because the end customers, as I said, they don't wait for NB-IoT or LTM or LoRa. They want a solution to their problem, and they don't come from a blank page. They're already using several solutions, whether it's 2G or whether it's a proprietary technology. So in fact, if we say, we can tell them, yeah, this technology will be much better, and we hope it will be with release 14 and release 15 optimization. But for now, they would still compare that to 2G or compare that to something else that they're using, a proprietary solution, and they still do not see this technical and cost advantage. So it's also this that is maybe slowing maybe the adoption in some verticals, is that they have solutions, or if they do not have the solution, what we are ready to propose now is not yet what they expect. So they expect lower cost for module. They expect better performance in terms of battery, and they expect also roaming agreement and global coverage, so that it can replace maybe legacy solution that they've been using for years.
Okay. And Proximus was one of the operators that was really in the ground floor with LoRa. I mean, you're just after saying that really it should be less than 6 verticals almost that operators should concentrate on. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the specific use cases that you feel are the most LoRa friendly and are being used at present.
Yes, sure. When I was talking about our 6 verticals, it's not only LoRa, so it's about IoT in general. But indeed, what we have realized when you offer to a customer a use case that can change his business model, that's something that is really relevant and that can get to a very quick decision. If it's about trying through business cases to convince him that he will save some costs, it's a much more difficult discussion. So as an example, indeed, of changing a business model, we had a nice use cases and based on LoRa that we rolled out, and it was a company that, as a business, was filling residential gas tanks. So what we see in Belgium, because of the expectation that gas will not be the future energy that will be supplied, we see when new neighborhoods are built that many times there is no utility gas infrastructure anymore in those neighborhoods. So what was being done, tanks are being put in the gardens of the people, with the negative aspect for the consumer that they need every time to fill up their tank, make sure that the tank is filled up or not empty, to make sure that they have a continuous energy supply, and then also with big bills every time you fill up your tank. And so what has been potentially being able to change this business model is that with the LoRa sensor, the gas provider changed his model by selling a monthly subscription as a utility for gas. So the customers are not anymore looking into their gas. The supplier is looking into the consumption of the gas, is billing the customer on a monthly basis, like if he would have been connected to the to a network and can consume his energy like that. And that's something that you can directly show that you can change, and those use cases are very easy between brackets to sell, and it's a perfect use case for a national deployed LoRa network, because it's not deep indoor, because that's always the question: how deep are you and do you reach still? But still, you have a national coverage, because those customers are potentially everywhere and the houses are everywhere. So that was a perfect use case for the LoRa deployment we saw during the last months.
And turning to Orange, obviously you're another LoRa-friendly operator, as it were, but you've also been using LTM as well. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the types of deployment that either technology use.
Yeah, so for LoRa, we have also a national deployment in France, and we have some POC ongoing outside, and we have also the capability to deploy for enterprise dedicated LoRa networks anywhere, let's say, in the world, with some brackets, so maybe in more than 100 countries. If a customer wants to have a similar solution, for example, in his factory, in several countries, sometimes we are in an Orange footprint, sometimes we are not, but we still have the capabilities, because it's an unlicensed solution, to deploy that for a dedicated customer, and this is done through the OBS solution. And this is very interesting, because we see a lot of use case for LoRa in the smart industry. So industrial campus, port, where what they want is sometimes sensors. So they want to measure some environment. They want to measure quality of the air in some buildings. They want to measure the temperature in other. They want to ensure that some machines are working in their optimal range of function. And some also wants to have some asset tracking with an autonomous tracker that will be installed in the machine and left without recharging for several years. And LoRa is really well suited for this. So this is really the two type of use case that we see quite a lot is industrial sensors and trackers for LoRa. On the LTE-M, we are more currently on use case that are benefiting from the capability of LTE-M, which is higher data rate in both uplink and downlink, lower latency, and also support of mobility that will be implemented in some networks. So a lot of usage around whether it's logistics or onboard telemetry. So I think we heard about insurance based on the driving. So in fact, we've seen some players coming and saying we used to work with a 2G solution. Now we want to move to LTE-M because it's capable of sending the data from the drive quickly, and it's a future-proof solution. And we will also have a better coverage indoor. So if the car is in the car park or underground car park, it would still be able to be accessed to upload the drive. So typically, LTE-M is more value-added LPWA. With LoRa, we have this long autonomy on battery and also the good performance for indoor, and especially in the uplink, and for low packet, so low packet sending. We're not using LoRa for case where you need to send a lot of contents. LoRa is really suited for short packet.
Maybe I can just add and confirm indeed that the LoRa network is actually very flexible. So you have your installed base, your LoRa network, and in several cases, what we saw because one of our verticals and success use cases are smart buildings. Sometimes the smart buildings, because the concrete, because the way they are built, they are lacking coverage inside the building. And just adding a picocell into the building that extends directly your network is something very easily done, and covering your building until the underground as well. So that's a very very interesting aspect that we don't see, or at least not today, in the cellular networks. And as you said, indeed, potentially in sites where you are even not operating as an operator. Yeah.
And one of the other technologies is obviously narrowband IoT. Vincent, Proximus started trialing that last year, I believe. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing and what the plans are for the technology now?
Yes, sure, indeed. Last year I said we were trying it out, which we did, and the very difference and a different aspect between this narrowband IoT and the LoRa is that indeed for LoRa we went through a complete network rollout. So it was about rolling out new gateways, new antennas. I'm living in a country in Belgium with the regulation on setting antennas is pretty heavy. And it has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with the way my country is organized. But it took some time to roll out a network. What we see now, indeed, we were trying narrowband IoT last year, and the nice thing there is that you don't need to have months rolling out your networks while you still don't have a customer. So it would be much more difficult to wait for your customer and then tell your customer, well, wait now, we need now 2 years to roll out our network and to offer you a service. So the nice thing with narrowband IoT, also the fact, and it depends of the radio network and the provider you are having, but in our case, we realized that the upgrade of our radio network to enable narrowband IoT was pretty easy. So I'm not referring to the business case, because this doesn't mean it's for free. That's another commercial discussion that everybody needs to have with his mobile network supplier. But it could be done very easily. We mentioned this morning, we roll out a network and the network is empty, and we may think about having MVNOs on it. Actually, what we realized, test the narrowband IoT. We realized that we could deploy it, but we didn't deploy it without a customer. So we were expecting, indeed, we will be announcing a big, what we call transformational deal. So it's a big deal with 100,000 of devices soon. But we could indeed decide as soon as we were, because it was a public tender, as soon as we were receiving the offer, that we could deploy the narrowband IoT network. So we are currently deploying the narrowband IoT network for this specific customers, and in the coming weeks it will be made public. Unfortunately, we hope that we could do everything with LoRa and with our existing SIM base, but it's unfortunately not the case, specifically in those public tenders where there was a very important push on the technology. So we said earlier that the customer doesn't care about the technology. It's not always the case. So you may have public tenders, indeed, where the customer asks for a specific technology. And as an operator, you may then decide not to tackle those, or indeed to try to be more ambitious, leading and having, but at the price of needing to deploy several different technologies. We also realized that the LTM is there as well, also with specific use cases, but again, a way, if you have an existing mobile network, a very easy way to deploy is whenever you have a customer need.
And in terms of the nature of this deal, what can you tell us in terms of the industry, the use cases that?
Well, I cannot tell you a lot, unfortunately.
We're all friends here. We can keep a secret.
Is there a camera there?
No, not at all.
No, I will not disclose the customer, but it's a specific use. We mentioned in the narrowband IoT the power consumption aspects, and indeed that's one of the aspects where the LoRa is much more efficient, what we see today, than the narrowband IoT still. And this specific use case is about electricity metering. So when you are in a context of an electricity metering, the power is, of course, less an issue. What we did have as well is a requirement for bandwidth that was also not achievable with LoRa. So you indeed, it's unfortunate, but you indeed realize that specific use cases need specific networks. So as a telco, or you choose your battle, or you will have to invest in several networks, but we decided to do it based on the customer demand.
Okay, thank you. And by contrast, Orange has been a little more reticent, shall we say, on narrowband IoT. I mean, my understanding is, I think Belgium's the only market where it's deployed.
Yes, absolutely.
Why the reluctance?
In Belgium, we have both. We've announced both NB-IoT and LTM. In fact, we are not doing LoRa in Belgium for now, unless there's again a customer demand, but it's not been the case. We've seen some large tenders from the utilities on asking for specific technology, and if NB-IoT has been requested. Why we are not as enthusiastic as other operators? Well, if we come back to the origin of where NB-IoT came from in how it was dealt with in 3GPP, it was done really to address mainly this utility market, and especially the water metering. That means the metering very deep indoor, with low amount of data needed, like maybe once a day, and with a very long battery life requested by the utility. So they have some very high expectation, including on the price of modules that they want to reach, and the price of connectivity. And we think that currently it's not there yet. We've tested also in terms of power consumption. We think LoRa is better in terms of power consumption than mobile IoT solution, whether it's NB-IoT or LTM. So we test, we continue the test, and we expect some improvement, especially with release 14 and release 15 on this. And we will use the deployment by Orange Belgium also to learn more about the technology itself and how it's evolving. but we are not yet where it's supposed to be. So and also we see that with LoRa and LTE-M, we can address a large variety of use cases. Some of them would not be addressable by NB IoT either. So we think that with those two technology, we have a good mix, and we can address not only use case, but also different deployment type. So it's very important for some customers. Some customers expect a national coverage very quickly for the reason that was said that maybe they have gas tanks a bit everywhere, or if you want to do asset tracking, you want a national coverage. But some also expect dedicated coverage because their factory is hard to cover, and so they probably would need dedicated indoor coverage done by picocell, and it's much easier to do by LoRa for now. So it's also one room of improvement for the mobile IoT solution is how we are going to tackle this deep indoor coverage in the future. Because new buildings are actually harder to cover than existing buildings. So more and more we would have need to bring the connectivity by using picocell from the also on the cellular. So it's one of the reasons why currently, yes, we don't think it's where it should be or it will be, and we will continue testing, assessing with the Orange Belgium deployment and business opportunities over there.
Okay, Vincent, just to go back to something you said in your last answer, you said that the customer in one case specified that they wanted narrowband IoT technology. I mean, how common is the awareness of the different types of technology and what they can do?
It depends of the customer, the specific customer. I mean, did a really deep study about all the IoT and the existing. But indeed, the customer is certainly not in the, when we talk about where I see a very big opportunity in the manufacturing and the industry, I don't think that the customer is really aware of all those differences in technologies. Even the fact that it's a licensed or unlicensed band, I mean, they don't really care. What they care though is indeed the fact that they invest most of the time. It's because it's a long battery life. They invest in very long projects. So they want to be sure indeed that your technology is there and is there to stay. And that's something that indeed as a telco operator you can put some credibility around. We see this as a differentiator for us towards more private operators, because that's one another big difference with LoRa is that we have competition also from non-telcos, because there are quite some private operators as well. But that's something we can add on the credibility to make sure that we will still be there in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I would say that the awareness, especially for the mobile IoT solution, has increased quite a lot in the last even 6 months. The fact that, first of all, also within the operator industry and with GSMA, I think there's been an effort into avoiding the confusion with the different namings, because there was Cat-M, Cat-M1, Cat-M2 that in fact only was used for a few months before it changed to Cat-NB1. So this, for large groups, they have R&D, they can follow the work of 3GPP, but for smaller company, it's too much acronym. They need to have a bit more clarity. So I think the work with the GSMA and the promotion in different trade shows has been quite useful. So there is NB-IoT with its evolution. There is LTE-M that involve the Cat-M1 category, but it's not only Cat-M1. You have some features that are core network features in it. So this is clearer, and we see, because we've opened an open IoT lab in Paris, and we see more and more mature projects coming to our labs. Last year when we opened it, it was very early stage for some. They didn't really know what they were coming for. They were just testing. Now they have identified why they need LTE-M, why they cannot do it with LoRa or with Sigfox. Some of them, they've been testing with NB-IoT. They also want to test with LTE-M because of some different characteristics. So it's really much more mature, and it's more promising now in terms of the reality of the project. And they've already identified also the difference between unlicensed technology and cellular and licensed solutions. They understand the migration from 2G to LTE-M or NB-IoT for some. The only question that now they have is the relation to 5G. So they're really a bit more now, because there was so much buzz around 5G at the Mobile World Congress this year that it needs a bit of clarifying. I think there will be a white paper soon by the operators on these topics. They want to understand, they say, if I invest in LTE-M or in NB-IoT, what will happen when 5G arrives? So we have to, as an operator, to educate them, to reassure them that investment in LTE-M and NB-IoT are future-proof, because that's now they are making a decision for the next 10 years or 10, 15 years.
So how will LPWA technologies be future-proof then among 5G? I mean, how are you going to be able to convince customers that that will be the case? What will be their role within 5G networks?
Well, there was a decision taken a few weeks ago in 3GPP to make sure that the first generation of 5G for LPWA would be based on LTE-M and NB-IoT interface, radio interface. There will not be a new 5G radio interface for the LPWA segment. So the reason is because in release 15, the evolution of LTE-M and NB-IoT will meet the 5G requirement. So there's no need to invent or design a new radio technology, because it would be met with the current one and its evolution. So this is what is going to be used as a way to reassure them. It's like there'll be white paper, there will be explanation in different bodies and trade show. So this is really a key, because now we've seen in many verticals and in some region, they've had the experience of going from analog to digital, and sometimes some operators have switched off also their 2G networks. They had to prepare for the follow-up. So they want to make sure that this is what they do now is a long-term investment, at least, especially for utilities or cars. It's minimum 10 years. Yeah. So it's very important.
Yes, and I wouldn't see why, as an operator, you would stop your service because 5G is there. I mean, we see today, and we can easily explain the 2G, we are in a 4G network, but the 2G, we are still operating it for M2M. So it's not because there is a new generation that the other disappears. And indeed, like you said, the 5G initially, at least, will be based on what exists as well. And for on the LoRa side, we commit on the long-term servicing. It wouldn't make any sense for us to stop the service anyway. We go with our customers for the entire life of the project.
Okay. So I wanted to turn attention slightly to roaming. Martin Tuft from BT, I think, mentioned the importance of cross-border Internet of Things networks. Now, I know Orange had done some work recently with LoRa roaming. Ronan, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about the challenges that face an operator in enabling this kind of roaming.
Yeah, so that's, roaming in LPWA, so on the unlicensed side, on LoRa, as it was a new standard, LoRa Alliance has worked on specification. They were published late last year. And what we've done with KPN, we've tested an activity, the network provider. We tested the first roaming based on this new specification. So there are different modes. So in LoRa, you have some passive roaming, active roaming, and all this. So we tested in the passive roaming. What it means is, for example, if you have a tracker, especially, and it's attached to Orange in France, but it goes to Holland and then possibly at some point to Belgium, it would then be able to send its data through to the Proximus or KPN networks, and then the information, the data itself, and the information about what we would say in GSM would be the CDR, would be passed to the host network. So this principles are very common now in cellular networks. So if we have to remember how we deploy GSM and then 3G and 4G, so we've got all this experience. So here in LoRa, it's still new. It will be implemented in all the, I would say, the public networks through the following months and years. So we expect, yes, roaming to be available for customers on LoRa I don't have a date for opening, but technically now the solutions are there. It's more a question of having the agreement on the business model behind it. So.
Yes, what I could... The roaming aspect of LoRa has been many times in the press seen as something that was negative for LoRa with regards to the other technology. I don't really agree in the sense that when we were early stage, roaming was not that critical for our customers. We were doing POCs. Now it becomes to be, but indeed, together with Orange and other operators within the alliance, we have been pushing this. So the standards are there. The tests are being ongoing. The roaming agreements are being signed. So the bilateral kind of roaming, I don't see it as an issue, and will be there in the coming weeks, and we'll be able to offer our customer. What I would like to add, though, is that indeed. Differently than in the cellular networks, we can expect much more LoRa networks than narrowband IoT networks, because it's unlicensed, and so you may potentially have hundreds of networks, and then you may start to ask the question: how is that bilateral scenario still something that can be handled, and can we look at a different way into this? Because indeed, it's about a very low revenue and low margin business, the IoT. We've discussed this already today, so you cannot afford through roaming to add a lot of additional costs. So we are tackling this into the alliance as well. We are thinking about technologies like a blockchain, for example, that could be used to have a roaming and micro payments between all those tons of networks. So those are things that are being thought about. It's not critical right now, but just to say that indeed it's also something that is being looked at, and the roaming between the national networks that we see today, yes, indeed, that will be there in the coming weeks or months. We'll see.
Yeah, and if I want to complete on the license LPWA, so mobile IoT solutions, roaming is also a concern of a lot of customers, especially if we think about some of the asset tracking, logistic, fleet management. That's why they chose 2G or 3G 10 years ago. So if we want to convince them that, yes, mobile IoT is also there for you, we need to ensure that the roaming aspect are very soon solved. So we've already started to do some tests internally, and we will also do some tests on LTM with some other operators to test that, to verify that first the roaming model of LTE, which is already in place, allow LTM roaming very quickly. So it's something that we are working on in the next few weeks with other operators that are working on LTM. Internally, the first analysis is that we should be in position to use the existing model, so which would be very reassuring in terms of time to market. So.
Maybe an aspect to look at, I don't know what your view on this is, Ronan, with regards to the different frequencies. So all the devices that are on the mobile IoT will not support all frequencies. So you may indeed see how the different deployed networks, which frequencies they are enabling for the mobile IoT, And so to avoid that a device, like a smartphone, can use different frequencies, maybe the device will not, to decrease the cost. But then you may have an issue on the roaming side as well. I don't know what your view is.
There was some work within the GSMA task force, the TM task force, and I think there was similar work on the NB-IoT to define the minimum number of bands that would allow worldwide roaming. And it's true that we don't want to implement all the bands that are in our smartphones in a tracker. Otherwise, it's going to be quite costly. We think in Europe, for example, for LTM, we need 2 bands. If we only have one, some countries may not be covered, or some region may not be covered. In the US, probably they need 2 or 3. In Asia also. So probably a total of 8 to 10 bands may be needed. So it's still going to be maybe an expensive tracker. But if we think of what it will enable later, it has to be considered. Because currently, if you take a tracker now, it has probably 2G, so it's 4 bands. 3G, it's already 2 or 3 bands, and the new one may have already LTE. So it's even more than what we would have with mobile IoT. So it's clearly that it's a concern. We need to have multi-band tracker, and the question remains whether we need in the transition period to also have 2G as backup, because if you want a global coverage, currently you may end up in a country where there's no LTE at all. So in that case, it's better that the tracker goes back to 2G rather than to nothing.
Okay. I think I have time for one more question before opening it up to the floor. I think this was in Vodafone's most recent IoT barometer report. They said that the market was broadly split between LoRa connections, narrowband IoT connections, and LTE-M connections. Curious about both your thoughts as to how long you see this continuing, and in the longer term, how the market will settle between the different types of connectivity.
If Vodafone says it.
As simple as that.
No, it's of course very, very difficult to say. I think, of course, because of the maturity, I think the LoRa has a few years in advance. I don't think that it depends what you look at, if it's about the deployed networks, about the activated devices, about the devices that are already in production, or how you look at it. Indeed, it's easy to say 3 technologies will be there at 33%, all of the technologies. I kind of would agree at this stage, but it's very difficult to tell. At least that's the bet that we take at Proximus. Yes.
I would say there's probably one technology is missing, and if you look at the slide that was shown on what Vodafone was putting on the market for the commercial IoT, it's none of the 3 technology are in the device.
For the consumer.
For the consumer.
Yeah.
And probably still 2G. It might be not considered as an IoT technology because it's a legacy, but it's still a large part of M2M and part of M2M and IoT. And especially if you look at what was recently, I mean, the new directive on the e-call, for example, it means you will have, again, more and more devices on our networks in Europe. We still use 2G as legacy technology, so 3G is also possible for some module. But I think we have to count probably 2G in it as it's a legacy M2M, but in some case it's mainly used as an IoT technology. It sends message in case of emergency, but it sends geolocation, and that's it. So I think, yeah, we have to count that. For the rest, unless we see new technology coming, which is so we cannot predict too much the future, but the rest probably we have the basis with the mobile IoT for growth. I think complementary with LoRa because of the advantage in type of deployment, and probably we have to manage the legacy 2G volume park.
2G is never going to die. then obviously from what you two are saying. I'd like to open up for questions from the floor. I assume, Tom, good on you.
Just to pick up on one of the points this morning about MVNOs and LPWA, what are your feelings about LPWA? That's a bit of an acronym. LPWA, MVNOs, would they be something that you would host on your networks for LTM or narrowband IoT or even LoRa?
Yeah, so the comment I just made for the narrowband IoT, we indeed, the trigger for that would not be to fill the network, because indeed we deploy the network based on the need, so we will not have an empty network. With regards to LoRa from Proximus, we are very open towards that. So we are indeed discussing with other networks indeed to see if the coverage can be complemented. An MVNO, I don't see it specifically without any infrastructure from the other party. It may be about the sharing of infrastructure, but even, I mean, the wholesale aspect of our LPWA, that's certainly something we are open to discuss, but today hasn't been a reality.
Yeah, and I would say it's something we're looking at, but we don't have any position on a specific MVNO for IoT. I mean, there's been mixed success for MVNO depending on the countries. So in some countries, it's been more successful than others. But usually, I would say some verticals are very advanced in the new business model, whether it's going to be for IoT or it would be applicable when we move to 5G. It's still to be looked at, because there are some technical challenge to handle. I mean, the automotive sector is one where the notion of MVNO could make sense to them. What is it for operator? And then if we go into that business, it's still very unclear.
Any?
Another question linking back to earlier discussions this morning. Is voice enablement on your radar for any of these technologies? So I'm thinking about linking short-range radio for usage in homes or buildings, or even other B2B applications that require roaming. Is voice enablement, adding on Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, others, is that on your radar at all, or just too niche for you?
Voice enabling certainly is. I would not relate it directly to our LoRa network. So I don't know if your question is really related to LPWA. Yes, when we look into the voice assistant, that's something that's on our radar and on which we are working. Specifically on LoRa, I think it's pretty challenging to put voice into LoRa packages. Maybe on LTEM, it's already more feasible. If the use cases are there, we will look at it. It's not something that we have there today. But as we said, indeed, our positioning is being access network agnostic towards the customer, and the platform integrates the different access networks as well. So we could use the voice using another technology, but I would not see it on the LoRa, I would say, and not on the narrowband IoT neither.
So on our side, so there's two aspects for voice. We see some use case where voice is needed on top of IoT, especially there was talk about safety for remote workers or for people. So it's like emergency button, and then as a consequence, maybe you want to check with a voice call, what's the status of that person? Do they really need assistance? Is it a mistake? Do they need something to be done? And for that, LTEM seems to be quite a good, promising technology. So we will test the support of voice on LTEM first in our lab, and we will consider later whether it's mature enough or if the quality is good enough to go further. We see a lot also of use case, and currently 2G again is used for that, where you have an emergency button for dependent person. like Alzheimer, for example, like in some case, people that need to be reassured that if they press a button, somebody will talk, and it's not just a machine. And then, so currently we use, it's 2G and 3D, it's being used. And so if we want IoT and voice to be supported together, probably LTM is a good start. And it's VoLTE, it's not anymore circuit switch voice. And for the other part, in the home or in the car, then we have a project around a Jingo was mentioned earlier. It's been presented. So it's we have a voice assistant project internally, but for in the home and maybe later in the car. But it's something that is not yet commercial, but it's been described in some show already by Orange, and I think it's also a joint project with Dutch Telecom. It's been, as I said earlier.
Any other? Mark Smith.
Really a security-related question. I know we've got a couple of panels coming up on that, but just interested to get your thoughts on the security sort of characteristics of the three networks we've talked about. Is there any kind of difference between the three when it comes to security? Is one more secure than the other? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the mobile IoT solutions are based on LTE security, so we have the same. We have encryption and authentication based on SIM and later EUSCC, so eSIM. This is already on the network side. Then for the data, there will be some additional protocols needed to ensure that the data that you send to the platforms are sent in secure protocol, whether it's over IP or non-IP mode. So I would say this is already part of our existing network's evolution to be secured. For LoRa, LoRa has two types of security. One is network, and the other one is application. So with different type of encryption. At Orange, we've ensured we've put some rules. We look at security from the design of the application. It's security by design, and not we don't wait for an issue to happen to fix it. So we've put very strict and secure, for example, protocols on the gateway side, because as we said, the gateway in LoRa are small, so they can be from sometimes like a Wi-Fi access point. They can be accessible by a person. So we have to ensure that they cannot be tampered with in a way that could put the network at risk. So it's something that we've worked with all our gateway suppliers, for example, to ensure that once you're on a network, you're in secured way. So there are ways to put security to the right level and ensure that the data is not at risk.
Yes. I think indeed it's a very important role that a telco can play beyond other private networks, for example. We have quite some security knowledge, and it's certainly a differentiator that we could play. And we also need to be careful when we mention security and LoRa, for example. The LoRa Alliance is not responsible of the complete end-to-end security. So it's in a specific boundary of what LoRa does, and we have a role to play on an end-to-end security. So that's indeed, again, a way where we can differentiate, and beyond the application, also the security of the data after it's stored, and really get a complete holistic security solution. And it's indeed, in the IoT, I think this will still be a hot topic in the coming months, but I think for the telcos, a differentiator to play.
Fantastic. Any last questions? Okay, we will leave it there. I just want to express my thanks to both Vincent and Ronan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.